Right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to October's London Web Performance Meetup. My name is Perry Dybel. Speaker tonight is Adam Onishi. He's going to tell you everything that you ever possibly wanted to know about WordPress optimization in the context of the development of the LondonWebPerformance.org website. It's been a fun journey, I would say, getting this website built. It's taken a long time to get the organization sorted out, and then when we went through kind of specking what we wanted, we were kind of like looking at what we were kind of leveraging from Meetup, plus the things that we wanted to do that Meetup didn't offer us and all that kind of thing. So most of that was kind of like around the ticket purchasing system and all things like that. But being WordPress, there were some challenges to actually get the site performant. So, but Adam, in his infinite wisdom, kind of took on the project, and here we are with this talk tonight, which Adam's also going to be giving at Velocity in Amsterdam in about a month's time. So if you do find any little tweaks that you think that we should add to the site, please send them in, and we can kind of tune that up. Basically, just a couple of little quick things as usual. Toilets are out through the exit and straight down the corridor and on the right. If there is a fire or anything like that, the alarms go off. We must exit by the stairs. Do not try to use the lifts. And that's all really we have to worry about. Just in terms of what we've got coming up in future months, in November, I've got Peter O'Shaughnessy from Samsung. He's going to be giving a talk on his sort of like real world experience of developing a progressive web app. Obviously, being at Samsung, they're very concerned about mobile performance and all these kind of things. So I think that will be really interesting. We've heard a lot of talk from like leading luminaries about PWA, but this is going to be someone who's actually tried it out for real. So I'm really looking forward to that talk. So that's going to be, I think it's the 1st of November, the first Tuesday. So actually not that far away. In December, I'm hoping to do our usual favorite of the Christmas quiz, which will be based on like the last 12 months of these meetups. So go out there, watch the videos again on the website, and take part in that. Alongside the quiz, we're going to kind of like try and do some like little quick ignite sessions. So like, 5-10 minute talks, not 5-10-minute talks, 5 to 10-minute talks, around like anything in the performance field, really. So if you've got something where you don't feel that you're ready to say something, a 40-minute talk and stand up here for ages and ages, even if there's like some little top tips that you've found and you just want to like present those, please get in touch with me, and we try and make that a little bit more of a fun night. So so hopefully that'll be good. And then in January, already got lined up Ada Rose, who's also from Samsung, and she's going to, totally sure of the subject matter that she's going to be talking about, but I think she was going to be doing some stuff on about the performance of WebRTC and such like. So again, that'll be something a little bit more unusual, and should be, again, really interesting. And hopefully into February and March, I'll have some more things ready to announce like next month for those. So a couple of other events to make you aware of. There's the Google Development Group of London have got their London Dev Fest on Saturday. That's at Google campus over near kind of Liverpool Street, Old Street area. It's a free event all day. If you do want to go, I tweeted out the link to that yesterday. So just kind of look at the history on LDNWebPerf on Twitter, and you'll find the link. But it'll be pretty easy to find. Again, should be a good event. Mostly, again, talking about just Apple. They're talking about Apple in the context of Android being better, I'm sure, but no, but no, they're going to be talking a lot about Android, web, and cloud technology. So if you're interested in any of those things, I'd kind of get along to that. Should be pretty good. And again, just mention it, I'm sure you're all aware of it, but Velocity Europe is coming up on, I think it's the 7th to the 10th of November in Amsterdam. Adam will be talking there. I'm sure there'll be some people from this group that will be over there. I'm sure again that will be a great event if you want to go. So that's the end of my usual intro spiel. At the end of the talk, usual beers and pizzas. Stay along, have a chat, and give us all the bugs that we haven't found yet. Anyway, I'll now hand over to Adam and he'll get on with the talk. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I shall go and check that you are all okay.
Very, so kind. Is that okay? Okay, so hey, I'm Adam. You can find me online at Onishi Web, and as Perry says, I'm here to talk about the WebPerf website. So hello. Actually, I work at the Financial Times here on the origami team, but that's kind of by the by today. Usually, you see me on the ticket desk downstairs, welcoming you all. But Patrick's done that for us tonight. So obviously tonight, here to talk about Web Performance London, or London WebPerf. I have got a buttload to talk about. So let's have a look. So going to start off by talking about what the kind of metrics and the testing situation was, how I kind of measured all of this. Then look at design. Then we've got images part 1, which is kind of fun. Bit on styles and scripts, fonts, then hosting, yay, WordPress. CDN stuff, images again, and then some of the next steps that I'm already looking to do, and then I'll kind of review what we've already looked at. First off, content warning. This talk does A, contain WordPress, but B, contains quite a bit of motion, so if you're not okay with motion on the screen, eyes over here, probably better than eyes over there. So yes, WordPress is involved. That one's for you, Phil. And it's kind of okay because, I mean, before I worked at the FT, I was a WordPress developer. I worked in a lot of agencies doing WordPress. I even wrote a book on WordPress, which you can still buy. So go and do that. So let's start off looking at kind of the testing and the metrics. So doing a talk about performance, you can't really do a talk about this without looking at how you're going to test it. So of course there's web page test, what everybody does. But there's also Pagespeed Insights, which I've been using, which gives you a nice insight into what you're actually, what areas are kind of hindering perf. And it gives you a load of guides on how to fix those. I was also hoping to use Google Analytics because we have that on the site to get some real user metrics, but sadly it didn't really collect much. So there is no run. So that's what we're going to test with. Next, I'm going to look at some of the actual metrics. So let's start with speed index. Then we'll look at start render. Then we've got the Pagespeed Insights score. And finally cost, because I think that's actually quite a big deal. You know, you want a website to cost as little as possible when people are using it. You don't want to start eating up their data. Maybe less of a problem here in the UK because we have unlimited data on a lot of our contracts. Hands up if you don't have unlimited data. Okay, actually more than I thought. So that's good. So cost. So the speed index is this. This is kind of a nice summation. And as Tim Cadillac also says, speed index gives us a better idea of perceived performance. And then in terms of first render, I love this from Monica. Just if you're not comfortable staring someone in the eyes while you're in the amount of time it takes your site to load, you know, do some work. And I think actually Phil commented on this, that it's even a bigger problem in Britain. Because we just know. Imagine doing that on the tube. If your site takes 5 seconds to load, sit there on the tube and just stare. No. And then what does my site cost? This was a site by, who was this by? Tim Cadillac. Oh, it was Tim Cadillac as well. Okay. So with all these metrics in place and all the testing, you've got to kind of set a level for the testing. So in this case, I've gone for 3G in London because we're in London. This is probably where the site's going to be viewed most from. And 3G because, you know, getting good performance over mobile views and stuff like that is quite important. And I'm going to test the homepage mainly. This is mostly because the homepage has the majority of the images, is probably the heaviest page. So if we're testing the heaviest page, we can generally see how the rest of the website is going to perform. And also I wanted to have a look at some benchmarks in terms of other sites and kind of see what this compares against. So first off, we take Meetup, the old London WebPerf site, which is a fairly good benchmark to have. You've got to, you know, if we're going to build a new website for this Meetup group, we may as well beat the last one. So let's start off. Got our metrics. The top metric is first render. First view. The second one is subsequent views. That's quite high. 5.5 seconds for first load, 2 and a bit on subsequent views. Pretty middling Pagespeed Insights scores. And it's pretty pricey. So got quite a low benchmark. So let's take a look at a competitor. So this was brought up quite a few times during design, development, inspiration. You know, let's look at this. So why not give it as inspiration for testing? So we've got our metrics. So pretty good first view. Second view is really good. Look at that. Not even half a second to view the second time. It's pretty high, pretty kind of high standard. Next, not brilliant. I forgot to mention the top one is mobile. The second one is desktop because mobile I think is actually more important. And then it costs 2 on the scale. So it's interesting. Some people talk about perf budgets. I didn't want to set a perf budget going into the build of this site. I will probably have one now since we've built the site and we've done a lot of work and tested it. Perf budgets, I think, are great when you have a level, but I didn't want to. I wanted to basically get this as quick as possible, as small as delivered as possible before actually starting to do stuff. There's one more metric. Our fantastic host. I mean, this is all about kind of pleasing the WebPerf community as well and your client. You know, you kind of always have to keep the client happy. So we've got our client happiness scale. Lovely, lovely little shirt. Okay, so let's start at design. Because for me, this is where things can go horribly wrong, it can go right. Performance does start with design. Lara Hogan's got a brilliant book on this. I've read it cover to cover in about 2 days. It's really, really worth a read. So I didn't want to talk about kind of general design things like, you know, don't put tons of images on the site. That's fairly obvious. I wanted to look at a couple of things that we've done specifically on the WebPerf site to improve design and kind of get around some regular kind of things. So let's start with banner images, because designers love banner images. I mean, this was the second page of like web design inspiration. I just Googled it and that was what came up. Every single one of them, massive, massive image. And they love high res banner images. They want the perfect detail. We've got one of our sub brands here doing a redesign and it's just all images. And they're like, but the images aren't quite the high quality we want. It's like, well, you're on the web. You're trying to load 12 images per page and then with infinite scroll. Of course they're going to be big. But what if we could have a banner image and make it really low res? So that's what we kind of did. We used a little trick like putting an overlay on it. In that case, you don't need a high quality image. You don't need anything really, really you know, good high pixel density. Make it blurry, you can't see. And this is with CSS blend mode. So this is just a really fairly modern trick. Fortunately, with WebPerf, we don't really have to support kind of many older browsers, so we can get away with it. You can detect this without supports if you want to as well. So you can provide a fallback, but really you don't need to. So you get to reduce that image quality without having to worry about the effect. It's quite a nice effect, in fact. Next, fonts. Designers love fonts. So we tried to limit weights and styles as much as possible across the site. We actually went with one font. We went at three weights, which I'm still trying to get down. But one way you can do this is through using custom fonts for headings, and then body copy can be a system font. You know, this is one way that's being tried at the moment. I'd like to do this on the WebPerf site, but you know, got to have that argument at some point. And this is a small side point. I don't want to do the whole designer should code, designer shouldn't code. I don't really care about that. I do care that they know what they're doing with the web, though. I care that they actually can have these conversations with us, and I can say, look, you shouldn't use this really high quality image because it's going to, you know, reduce the performance of the site. And it's, you know, it's great when you can have that. It's the same with print. Do you think any graphic designers didn't know what a stock would look like when it's printed on? So I think the web is kind of, I think we should have that level of from our designers. But fortunately, good designers, you know, really make this stuff easy. This is our designer. This is Mags. And it's really important to also have a good relationship with your designer. Fortunately, she's my other half. So I don't know whether it was some frosty nights, but you know, we got there. Anyway, so she asked if she wanted to come tonight. I said, no, it's okay. I'm going to put a picture of you up. Okay, so images. I don't want to talk about image assets and things like that. I want to talk about content images. This is one of the big things when you're building a website that's going to be managed by your client, because they need to work with these images and they need to be able to change and update images. And you need to make sure that the CMS and stuff like that is going to optimize them and do their best. So this is one particular example. This is our lovely sponsors area on the site. Sponsors are really important to a meetup because, you know, they help run it and help provide the money to run it. So we could have done this in a few ways. We could make an image sprite to do all these, but like, you know, you've got to do that on the server, in the CMS. We could have done it with one big image, but then you've got kind of the responsive web to worry about, and how many images do you really want to keep creating, and how many times do you want to go back to the designer? Oh, can I add a new sponsor? So, you know, you really need to do this and give the client as much flexibility as possible. And another thing, you can't expect the client to do all the optimizing, even if they are a WebPerf expert.
Might have suggested some of the tools to use to link.
Later. So this is where WordPress plugins come in. Did a bit of a search round, and I found this from WPMU Dev, who I trust. I've worked with their plugins before. It has a fairly high rating. It's been downloaded a lot. It's been used on quite a few sites, and it's been updated regularly. So, you know, I had a fairly high confidence in this. I tested it out, did some fairly good optimizations, so I was okay. If you want to find out more about plugins, there's a book. So let's see how adding this plugin affected the performance of the site. So got our metrics. Didn't remember to write down the Pagespeed Insights score at this point because, of course, unlike web page test, it doesn't give you an absolute URL to check back for. So we'll leave that one out for a little while. So first off, 2500, 1400, that's pretty good. 2 and a bit seconds. Don't know, would you look someone in the eye for 2 and a bit seconds? Maybe. And cheap as chips, brilliant, nice. Okay, so let's move on to stars and scripts. I am not going to talk about build steps. I think there are so many articles out there already about concatenating, minimizing CSS and JavaScript and things like that. There's also a lot better than what I've probably done. So let's move on. So let's dive into critical path CSS straight away. This was from one of Patrick's earlier talks on it, and where I remember first seeing this idea for the first time, and I was pretty shocked, especially when he opened up the Guardian homepage and just reels and reels of inline styles. I think had all of Epic Fail, just kind of like, oh, what's going on? But as Addy says, if it's done correctly, it can be used to deliver that kind of the one round trip render, which is great. There are a ton of tools for this. Critical by Addy Osmani being one of them. Penthouse, I think, actually uses Critical. And then load CSS to load the rest of your CSS. And now the important bit is when you're doing your critical path CSS, you should not try to go over the 14K limit, because that's as much as TCP can send down the wire on the first connection. So to check this out, I used a little plugin called Style Stats for Gulp. I think it's kind of just an NPM package you can use. And this gave me 5.7K gzip. So it's like, that's pretty good. That's the entire CSS. So opened up WordPress, got a bit of PHP. If it's a minified CSS file available, dump it in the head. Just all of it, just dump it in. Why not? And it turns out that works relatively well. Another thing, this is WordPress specific again. So async, adding async deferred to scripts is fairly trivial. You type it. In WordPress, it has this nice way of adding JavaScript through PHP. It also adds a load of JavaScript for you, which is nice. If you don't deregister jQuery, you'll get all of jQuery being loaded. And you don't really want that, especially on a really simple website like the WebPerf website. This is, again, just a really small script to run through all of them and just add the async defer scripts. There are two scripts on the WebPerf website, one which is a tiny core one to do a couple of animations. And the second one is some WordPress stuff, which does the Eventbrite embed and all the slides and the video stuff. So that's kind of needed. So at least this way I've caught them both and got them asynced. So let's look at what that now did. So, oh, okay, we've got our metrics. Interesting. 2.5, 1.3. And again, the cost is going to stay roughly the same. So actually, that's got a little worse. And I'm wondering if that's because I've gone over the 14K barrier, because I inlined a load of SVGs as well. So I'm looking into that right now. So next up, moving swiftly on, because I may have messed up, is fonts. It's amazing when you actually look at these numbers, what happens. So I talked about fonts earlier in terms of design and kind of selecting fonts. And now I want to talk about in terms of hosting and actually getting them on your website. So Google Fonts is fairly popular. It's my go-to kind of thing at the moment to use. It's quite straightforward. You get a lot of customization. The site's actually a lot prettier now too. And it gives you this handy kind of way of selecting your fonts and making sure that you can see they really prominently put the load time. But even if you're going to use Google Fonts and you're going to put up, and you've kind of got that down to fast, you're still doing this. You're still adding a render blocking CSS file to the head. You still have to do this. So you could lazy load these as well using something like load CSS, but then you're kind of possibly on the verge of doing some flash of unstyled content or flash of invisible text even. So there are other ways. The best way I found is to actually just self-host them. Google Fonts allows you to do this. It's perfectly fine. The license is free. And the best way I found of doing this was with this kind of app, the Web Fonts Helper app, which is really, really useful. Font Squirrel can also do this if you upload Google Fonts to it, and it will let you. But I found the file sizes from this were a lot better. So this also gives you full customization of what fonts you want to actually use, which is useful. For another handy reference, Zach Leverman has also done a really good post on font loading patterns for you to check out. So let's look at what this did. So we've got our metrics. I remembered to write down the Pagespeed Insights score this time. So let's see. There's a bit of a drop. About 2,000 for first load is pretty good. 1.5 seconds first load, and 1.1 on returning visits. Up to the 80s in terms of Pagespeed Insights, which is quite nice. And of course, it's cheap. And now what about Perry happiness score? We've got about a 3. So, you know, we haven't gone live there. We haven't really looked at the site. So he's still like, okay, it's all right. So let's talk about hosting. This is the fun one. As we get to talk about WordPress again. WordPress is notoriously bad on the server. It is a really unperformant PHP app. The database is ridiculously bad. It is doing so many SQL queries just to get a simple page up that it is just really troublesome to work with. But this could all change because PHP 7 is due. Well, it's out now, actually. And these are some of the benchmarks that it's ran. And it's more than double using WordPress. More than double the speed. It's close to HHVM, and our hosting provider might provide it, but I can't find a way to switch it on. So I'm going to have a chat with them. And this is also the memory usage, and that is just ridiculous. PHP 7 was built with for performance and with WordPress in mind, in fact. So if you look at this compared to Drupal or anything like this, it has a similar effect, but just the WordPress stuff, it is absolutely bottomed out. It's fantastic. In terms of actually a hosting provider, we have heard good things about WP Engine, so we tried them out. And one thing with WordPress at the moment is you kind of need to heavily cache the server-side stuff because it does tons on the server. It has to go to the database so many times to render a page. You want all of that cached as much as possible. Fortunately, WP Engine does this all for you. WordPress has a ton of kind of caching plugins and all sorts of different things to help speed up site performance. But some of them range from the absolute simplest to just so much complexity, it is unbelievable. And I've actually had fairly good, it's been a good experience with WP Engine. So I would kind of recommend them if you want to go with something on WordPress. Oh, and they do Let's Encrypt now as well. So you can get a free HTTP SSL certificate, sorry. It is, however, none of this is actually enabled on staging. So up until now, I've not been able to test with any of that. So we had to wait for launch. So what do we get? Here's our metrics. Look at that. It's got even better. And it's still costs. So I'm like this. This is fantastic. However, I refer back to our testing kind of setup. London, UK, Chrome. It wasn't on cable, was it? It was on 3G. So yeah, I may have got the data wrong. It's all wrong. Okay, so let's go back to the metrics. Let's test properly. So still, again, an improvement. That's interesting. About the same on first render and subsequent visits. But we have got 99 out of 100 on Pagespeed Insights. And again, it's cost nothing. And the Perry happiness score goes up to about 4, not 5. I was like, going to be happy about this. You know, it's live, it's really quick. Quick web page test. We need to do some image optimization, and CDNs are the main issue. All right, Perry. So CDN. Why are we doing CDN? Well, actually, to me, it's for no reason other than that. on web page test. Lovely big cross. And to be honest, CDNs are a bit of a mystery to me. I know what they do. I know they help performance, but I don't actually know what's involved in setting one up. I'm not really comfortable with all of that. I've logged into Akamai before, and I've been told the 3-4 steps you have to go through to purge the cache, but I've never gone much further than that. Fortunately, it's a WebPerf meetup. We have friends. So Akamai set up a CDN account for us, and I went in there. Took me about 3 attempts to find it, but I found the config. It was all done. I was like, amazing. I don't have to do anything. Fantastic. But then I went back to WP Engine. Sorry, can't help you with third-party CDNs. Yeah, they were less than helpful. They were actually just getting in the way at one point. It took an evening, 3 support agents, a support ticket, and finally they worked out that they had to put some find and replace in there, some post-processing to actually stop WordPress from rewriting the URL back from the CDN URL. But we got there. I didn't actually capture any results after the CDN was deployed. So let's move on to images part 2. Because as Perry says, there's still a bit of optimization left. So this is actually where Perry comes in, and he found this. So this plugin uses the Image Optim API, which if you were here last month, you'll know is, I don't know, I think you can have pretty good confidence in Image Optim. So this kind of goes against everything I said earlier. It doesn't have very high rating. It hasn't been installed very much. It was updated a while ago. Turns out it's because it's new. And that's it. And also, remember this from earlier? You can't really. So I found this on the website. I don't know if you can see there, but I'll just zoom in for you. So clients, whether they're WebPerf experts or not, will upload whatever images they need or they have. So I just took care of that. What I should have done was do this. So WordPress has a way of doing this in the background. I'd put in the speaker image. I hadn't put in the event image. So it was actually outputting a 2000 pixel image for where it should have been a 400 square. So I fixed that. It's good. So now let's look at some metrics. Yeah, it's about a bit lower still. We're about the same. 9 out of 100 again, and no cost. So kind of that's, sorry, let me get that back up again. So this is where we kind of end up after this. So 99 out of 100 on Pagespeed Insights. That one, by the way, is Google Analytics, because you can't, the browser cache isn't high enough on that, and well, you can't really do much about that. You either have Google Analytics or you don't. I was talking to Andy Davis about this at the time, and he was like, well, you know, you pick your wins. 1 point over that, you know, it's fine. You want analytics. You can't win every battle. 1.7 seconds isn't too bad in first render. This is over 3G, remember, but it could be better. 1.2 seconds return render. I'm going to look at that in a bit because it's better when I compare it to something else. But there's a reason for that. And the kind of page speed index score is kind of based similarly on those timings. So they're going to be about the same. So next steps. So here's a few things I'm going to look into if my clicker would work. So the time to first byte is probably an issue on 3G at the moment. So I'm going to look into that. I'm going to investigate why WP Engine is a bit slow, but also they're offering PHP 7 like imminently. So that should sort out a lot of the WordPress issues on the server. Also, they apparently do have hip hop VM, which is like a little bit faster again. So I'm going to try and enable that. Again, it's probably going to be an evening on chat with them. Like, can I install this? No, probably not. I don't know. Useless. I really want to reduce that first render. I don't think it should take 1.7 seconds for something that's got everything blocking. Earlier, we got it down a bit further. So I'm going to kind of do a bit of investigation into that and try and get it down to about 1.5, if not lower, and more towards the 1. Investigate browser cache. So this is another interesting point. The reason for that second render being not very much quicker was because it's not browser caching the HTML. HTML is still a full request every time with everything else returned from the browser cache. So maybe this can help. I'm going to look into service workers. It won't be a progressive web app, but it will kind of be, because, I mean, it depends on whose definition of progressive web app you look at. If it's Google's, it won't be, because I want a site URL bar in there. But I will be looking at how service worker can improve this. So it's time for a review. We've sped through that. Peter's not going to be here for a little while. Sorry. Loads more time for questions. So just a few kind of things to sum up. Design with performance in mind. You saw that we can do a few tricks like reducing the image size, the image quality by putting an overlay over it, or something silly like that, and reduce the number of fonts on there. Content editors, regardless of who they are, aren't going to want to do the work to improve performance. You're going to have to do it on the server or for them. Hopefully, it's easy to do that. And you can, even with something like WordPress, you can still do that. Always be open to improving your tools. You know, Perry suggested a better optimizer. He found one based on ImageOptim, which is great. So, you know, happy to swap that out and test it. And keep your testing consistent, because otherwise it gives you a false positive. As we saw, that was a bit of a shame. I was really happy with that score, and then it kind of went away. So let's have a look back at our benchmark. So I'm going to kind of take away all the kind of dual scores and just look at the first load and the first load and the first render times. The Pagespeed Insights score on mobile only, and then cost. So we have our metrics. So let's first look at Meetup. So that was like 6,000 something, 5.5 seconds, and quite expensive. Next, Fell, 2200, 1.8 seconds to first render, 88 out of 100. And WebPerf, just a little bit better. That's enough for me, to be honest. They're friends, it's okay. This was an interesting one, though. WebPerf, 26 requests, and like much, much smaller. Yeah, much, much smaller. But like the perf is, oh, I should really do a different slide for this. Yeah. The perf was about the same. So a lot more requests, but smaller size. So, and that second render, Fell's second render was almost instant, 0.3 seconds. So there's definitely something that can be fixed there. The Perry happiness score, I think he's roughly at about 5. There's all green across web page test right now, which is, you know, always a happy sign. But I think that's something to be aware of, is that even though something's all, you know, web page test is all green, I did the CDN and it didn't make a huge amount of difference. Was it really, you know, worth putting a lot of effort into doing CDN just to get a nice green tick? Whereas I could be looking at some other area of performance to increase that. Doing the inline styles didn't really bring anything down too much. So, you know, could I have just done that a bit differently, left the CSS in there, and that would have improved performance. So, you know, I think it's really important that you actually adjust for the right metric. So as much as this is lovely, the first byte time, this is over 3G. I said it needs a bit of work. But as much as it's nice having all that green sort of stuff, what do you really care about when it comes to your site? Is it that you don't have to stare people in the face for 2 seconds while it loads? Thank you. Also, just very quickly, there's a bit of a reading list. Pro WordPress Theme Development, really good book. Designing by Performance as well. And there's also this a brilliant article, if you just want to read a short article on it, Designer's Guide to Web Performance by John Jablonski. I hope I said that right. Emojis were from Emoji 1, and the Dorman icon was from the Noun project. And thanks to the lovely designer Margarita for doing the slides and the Paisley shirt. Yeah, we can do.
I want that shirt icon. Right, that's going to be my new avatar.
Good.
So, well, obviously, thanks very much to Adam for that great talk. Hope you found that useful. And basically, we've got plenty of time. So if there are any questions out there that anyone would like to ask, then just raise your hand, or suggestions. Come there. I would just say I'm just going to I just want to check over the SSL certificate you said about that we could use Let's Encrypt through WordPress.
Through WP Engine now.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
No,
right?
They didn't have it.
Yeah, they didn't have it at the time, so we ended up having to buy a certificate. But on the CDN side, in order to make the whole site SSL, again, Akamai were providing that feature, and I've seen it actually update once, which is great, So that was a really nice thing, that was seamless. That when the Let's Encrypt renewal came round, it just worked. Yeah, so that was a good thing. But it's interesting that next year, when come to renewal on the main cert, that's going to save me £100. So pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Just a quick question. You mentioned you got the SSL certificate and you put your metrics up, but the other sites, do they have SSL or not?
Good point.
Because then you've got comparisons. So they might make
True. Meetup does. Fell does not, I believe. So yeah.
Good point. Well made. Thank you very much.
Can we just get that said on on the tape? Just for our friends at Fell. Phil, you saw that, right? Just tweet it.
I was wondering about fonts and self-hosting. Was that really quicker than Google's hosting?
Yeah, lots quicker, because you're not doing the request for their CSS and all their stuff. So it kind of saves that extra DNS lookup. It saves all of that extra stuff going to a different server just for one file. I think I can optimize it more, to be honest, and I think I can do a lot better job of that. Also, we're just serving WAF 2. That's probably something I should have gone into, because like browser support, we don't need anything else. So I think I may be hanging out IE 11 to dry right there, but Edge is going to be better. So yeah, if you want to do just WAF 2, which is like really small font size, file size, sorry, yeah, you can, self-hosting is really, really quick, and that's all inline as well, which is what I'm going to look at in the near future as to whether that's impacting on performance. So whether I take the fonts out, and maybe that will change it. So inline, it's not base 64 encoded, which would be properly inline. It is a request as well. So yeah, thinking about it, that might be what's slowing down the first render. So yeah, I'm hoping to write a lot more on this. So once I go and do these little tweaks, I've got a month basically to now rip the site apart and do all of these little bits before velocity. So these things will come up, and hopefully this will be a slightly changed presentation and have like, oh yeah, also did this to the fonts. So yeah, good work.
I'd also, Adam raised one point in his talk about like, what was the point of putting that CDN on? And yes, there was a bit of vanity from me in wanting that green tick on web page test. But hey, you're going to be giving this talk in Amsterdam in 4 weeks. We have users of our website, like certainly in New York and Canada. I know someone from Germany, a Spanish person, was tweeting tonight about the stream being up and stuff like that. So, okay, it may be a little bit of a vanity thing in terms of our direct market here in London, but we are a web performance meetup. I wanted it to be right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely a case of that. It's just about the yeah, it was more of a let's look at the target audience, and look at the local stuff. But yeah, that probably did a lot of work. That probably did a lot of help if I were to change where that's coming from, where those tests are coming from.
Yep, it's a really good talk. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
You look like you've covered a lot of the steps to do accelerated mobile pages. Have you considered that?
I haven't really, because it's quite possibly not going to be something that will benefit the site in terms of like search and coming up as like it's news that they
It's meant to boost search results.
It's meant to boost search results.
SEO and mobile times touted half a second load time.
Okay. I don't know. Does it go beyond news?
It's,
Because
and
someone's nodding. So yeah.
particularly suitable to static content, like on
Okay.
JavaScript, you're inlining CSS, which is
Mm.
one of the requirements.
Yeah.
If you've got any JavaScript requirements, they provide some lightweight plugins to do that.
Cool.
It looks good. It looks like you've covered a lot of the ground to get there already.
Okay, cool. No, I haven't honestly looked at it right now, but yes, if I've covered a lot of steps, it could be worth just springing something up. Not sure how WordPress will handle that, trying to serve AMP files.
The
AMP
Drupal
request.
by our place is currently most of the way there.
Okay,
So it's
cool.
a similar stack.
Yeah, I'll look for a WordPress plugin. You're right. There's probably one already. There's probably about 5. Yeah. Oh, cool.
That's interesting. Like again, from my perspective, I was like doing a lot of the web page testing myself on, not just again the talk kind of focuses on the home page as the main entry point of the site, but we did test like all the subsequent pages, and it was interesting. The ones that were like the least performant, were the pages where we were having to do like the Eventbrite plugin and the SlideShare plugin and all that kind of thing, especially and the YouTube plugin and all that kind of thing. Those components do take a little while to load, but still on mobile they're more than watchable, which again, from a perception place is a good place to be. But again, if anyone's got any tips about how to get that stuff really performant, that would be cool. But one thing I can say from when I kind of again watch the video of the page builds that you can get out of web page test, we do like at least load those things last, which is good.
About the SVG. You mentioned the SVGs. How did you treat them? Like inline or like
so
symbols?
They're inline. Using a small script that somebody else wrote from my last job. It's part of our build script. I've just kind of do it now. Have noticed that there's no optimization on them though recently, which is why I didn't talk about them, because I didn't do anything, but I will, because there's just a Gulp plugin to do SVG OMG, and that will just put that through, and it still pops out in the head, or in the top of the header, sorry. But yeah, that's basically it. This is one thing I'm going to investigate, because there's now inline CSS and inline SVG. The page isn't massively heavy. I think it was about 15-16K. So it's just beyond first render. So I might look at, that first initial content delivery. So I might just look at tweaking some of that, using probably critical or something like that to just do the most needed CSS inline, and then some other bits. Actually going to look at, with Service Worker, taking out the CSS, the inline CSS and SVG, and caching that, and then pulling that in later, because then that will make the first delivery a lot smaller, especially if I can't do anything about that whole HTML not being cached in the browser cache. I don't know what's doing that. I think it's either WordPress or WP Engine itself stopping that from being cached, and I would like to find out why. It's interesting.
This is just the 2K you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Lazy load sponsors, for example.
Yeah, but then you've got to worry about, like, if JavaScript doesn't load, the sponsors are I'd say quite key.
Something else.
Yeah, I might have someone to knocking on my door if our sponsors haven't loaded over when JavaScript broke. Sorry, Perry. It's okay.
Just have a fallback for that, right?
Yeah.
So,
just the names.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not caching the HTML because maybe the headers were responding.
Yeah. Yeah, quite possibly.
It was interesting to talk about like AMP and stuff like that. I don't know whether, I haven't looked for sure as to whether WP Engine is doing anything on HTTP2, which because the whole site is SSL now, so we're at least kind of we're halfway there, but it's until they can actually host that and serve that, then
I did look it up at some point about HTTP2, but I don't
know
what
when their support is
the result
coming. Yeah.
heard of a host called Insta? WordPress hosting as well. When we were looking for new hosts, we did a trial with both WPengine and Insta, and they were definitely faster.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting. Interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is the thing. There's
Yeah.
loads and loads of stuff with WordPress. It is ridiculous, and yeah, it'd be really.
They're like another managed record, so
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the key thing for us. There's so many like WordPress hosts out there, but the level of service that you actually get, I know that, you know, Adam had his challenges with like getting the CDN to work, but you know, generally their support has been pretty good. You know, I'm not kind of kowtowing to them because they are not a sponsor in any way, shape or form. We chose them because I'd had experience with them in the past and stuff like that, and they were certainly better than a lot of others. But I hadn't heard of Kinsta, so that is something. And are they global, or are they just UK, or?
I think they're based in like Hungary.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
What else? What are you saying?
All static assets, so actually images, and believe fonts maybe, but I need to double check that. I can't say that.
You have
for
to check. I don't.
100%
We're not.
certain.
We're not doing things like, you know, JavaScript and
No.
CSS over the CDN.
No,
It's
JavaScript,
just-
yes.
is it-
CSS is inline, so it's
Right,
not over
okay.
CDN, but JavaScript, yes. One JavaScript file, because the way WP Engine had to set it up was just doing a post process on the HTML to look for the specific directory, replace that with Akamai. They couldn't do it for the WP includes directory because that might really mess up some stuff with WP, and so the embed script is coming from the regular domain as well. So I'm going to look at kind of combining that script at some point and getting rid of the second thing, because at least as long as I keep it up to date with what it's doing, I can probably pull that in with a build tool and concatenate it. So I'll look at getting rid of that extra script as well, which would be quite handy.
Did you end up? Was the integration with WP Engine for the CDN? Was that? Did you use that plugin? That, again, I
Yeah,
found?
one or
So-
similar.
Right,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a case of the WP Engine directly started to interface. We had to go through that.
So you had to go through
things, yeah.
a plugin in WordPress to do the whole content rewrite, which would basically, you're just telling it what URL to point assets at.
Yeah.
Then it rewrote all of the paths in the PHP, but then either WordPress or WP Engine, I'm still not sure which one. I think it might have been WordPress because of the force SSL stuff. WordPress behaves really weirdly over SSL. It kind of just rewrites all of the URLs. So that then rewrote the URLs back to the main domain, which was fun. So WP Engine just had to come in and rewrite them back again. So, you know, this is why WordPress is quite frustrating on the server, because there's a lot of stuff going on. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, because they're really not fond of breaking backwards compatibility, you know, powering 20% of the web and all that stuff.
But at least under PHP 7, it's just going to run faster. Right?
Yeah, with PHP 7, it will just, you know, do all the same stuff, but just a load quicker.
Yeah.
Be quite nice. I honestly don't know how to. I'll be honest. I don't know how to. Not with WP Engine going through the CDN. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I think
and also breaking the cache.
when I was investigating WP Engine's like integration with CDNs, I think that I hope I get this right, so apologies if I get it wrong, but through the investor, because they sell you a CDN service, which under the covers I think is based on Max CDN.
Yeah, it is.
Under the covers, and you know, it's a WP Engine is a service. There's only so far that you can push it. So you know, we kind of we could spend a lot of time on trying to sort that out versus like doing some of the other things that we did, and you know, we make the call to do what we did, you know, but we did consider those certain things at the time, and it was just about what was practical with that service, plus the cost, and cost came down to the price of the service plus the cost in our time to actually do the development. mostly his time, obviously. Yeah, sure. We've got plenty of time. Nothing turning up until 15:15.
So we go every possible extra mile from the technological and technical perspective to gain maybe, I don't know, half a point of second or something. And did you consider also the human factor? I mean, you can go to the designer and say, look, maybe we could change this or that, or go to him and say, I mean, all the tricks are using CSS blend modes or colors or reducing the number of fonts and so on. So which were along your path, did you consider also this factor? So going back to the design, or the design in your mind was something like given and never touch it anymore? Because this is a factor that we should consider. The leverage that we can have is go back to the designer and change something, or to the customer and change something. So it's something you considered.
Yeah. Design was in parallel. Fortunately, the designer is very close to me. You know, relatively just could turn around and go, hey, over here. So that was really handy. And I can't emphasize enough that kind of relationship between designer and developer. It really helps to be able to have that conversation. I don't like the idea of throwing designs across the wall. So there were plenty of times where we went back and forth over kind of performance and stuff like that. I'm actually now, after reviewing all of these things, going to go back and talk about the fonts and just see what we can kind of tweak just to make sure that we get a little bit out. Because at the moment we're serving 3 weights, so we could just knock that down to 2, cheekily. But you know, she's very good at doing these sort of things, and she understands, and we can have that conversation. And I can say, this is going to affect Perf. She'll be like, okay, well, what else could we do? And we did that a few times. Can't remember specifics. But obviously there was a case of don't just put images everywhere. It's like, well, of course. But, you know, things like that. So, yeah, and I think there's going to be conversations now afterwards. Like, this was one of the first times I've properly sat back and reviewed what the numbers said. I've been collecting them over time, and at the moment it's been a case of searching for green across of web page test and Pagespeed Insights. You know, getting that 99 out of 100 was, you know, a level we want to get to. Getting all of those green on web page test was another one. So from there, now this is what I mean about focusing on the right metric. I think that first render hasn't come down much. I'd really like to start working on that and seeing what we can affect, and whether that affects the page speed test stuff will be interesting, and I'll kind of see how that goes. But yeah,
one tool that I use a lot at work, but I haven't pushed our own site through it yet, is Yellow Lab tools. Again, pretty good, very good tool, especially for looking at CSS and JS artifacts in the timeline and things like that. So again, now that we've achieved a pretty good baseline, I hope everyone that can agree there that, you know, we're kind of in that 90th percentile point of how far we can go. And but there's, you know, it's the geek side of us now that likes to keep pushing, yeah, and see where it can go. I'll come to you too.
Yeah, I think it's been good talk, good discussion. The thing you mentioned at the beginning is you focused on one page, like the home page.
Mm-hmm.
How many different templates have you got on the site, and have you looked at the different performance metrics for those now,
Yeah.
or have you just focused on one?
So there's maybe 3 or 4 templates. The homepage has a couple of different states, and I'm pretty sure we tested consistently on one state. And I've looked at the performance across others. I want to simplify it for tonight and not just kind of get into too much kind of metric nerdery over like, oh, this is this page, this is this page. But we did look at different pages, and they were all relatively similar, if not a bit quicker, because they're not as complex. There's not as much coming from them. The obvious ones, like we avoided, was the ones with like YouTube and speaker deck stuff on, because they're just really heavy with the after the page stuff. I didn't want to kind of focus on that. I know you have to wait a while for those things to load. but yeah, we kind of looked across a broad range of things. We've got what you did, all of the pages.
I did all.
Like at the end, yeah, like I've got a list of just web page test results in a GitHub issue, which is quite nice.
And most of that things was around, like Adam said, around caching. Some of that stuff we're in control of. Some of the stuff we're just absolutely not in control of. So we kind of have to. One of the good things is that we've got very few third parties on our site. We don't need to, apart from those links out to YouTube and SpeakerDeck Touch. Whichever I always get them mixed up. I can't remember whether we're using SpeakerDeck or SlideShare, one of the two, but whichever one of them it is, it's working really well.
Whichever one the slides are on, because it will handle both.
Yeah.
So it's just a link.
Right. Yeah,
it's quite nice.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
No, it's not much a question, but more or less suggestion that would be interesting. Is a lot of optimization you did was more for HTTP1.
Yeah.
And like merging CSS and HTML, etc. And a lot of the optimization you're doing for HTTP1 for HTTP2, maybe it will be doing the opposite.
Yep.
So it'll be quite interesting to see with HTTP2 if all the optimization you did is causing more damage with HTTP2 than benefits.
Yep.
And what the cause and what the suggestion will be.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting.
That's for next year's talk when WP Engine supports it, and we can run 2 copies of the site side by side.
And it's also to do with browser support as well. It's not it's not quite there yet, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
that's good. H2, really? What on
the Akamai component?
Oh, on Akamai, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Did not know that.
Right.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Gonna check that out now because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
WP, I basically just switched WP Engine on and let it do what it does. If it gets something wrong, purge the cache, purge the cache. That's it. That'd be interesting. Ah, cool.
Anyone else, or we kind of run out of steam?
Good, because I'm thirsty. I've got.
Okay, yeah. I think we should definitely just.
I'm going to be around all evening and at the pub and stuff, so it's all good.
Yeah. So one last thank you to Adam for this great talk. And as ever, enjoy yourselves after the talk with some beers, and when the food arrives, help me out with that too, right? Because we should be fine, and hope to see you all again in November. All right, thank you very much.